the Steelers legit have a chance to do the funniest thing this offseason because Myles Garrett officially requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. His statement, as tweeted by Ian Rappaport, says, as a kid dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl, and that goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man that I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win, compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I've requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett. Now, the Browns are saying that they're not going to trade him.
My understanding is, despite this statement, the Browns are sticking to their stance, and they do not intend to have any conversations or trade Garrett.
But we know they have to say that. Them just saying they're not entertaining any offers right now doesn't really mean anything because players do have a lot more leverage these days. And if a guy like Myles Garrett doesn't want to play for your team, he's not going to play. Especially with the money that he's already made in this league and the fact, too, a team can get a ton of value in return for a superstar like Myles Garrett. It's better to get that value and that capital and assets as opposed to playing hardball and keeping that disgruntled guy half-assing it on your team or keeping him on the payroll, keeping him on your team, and then he's not showing up at all or just retiring, kind of like what Carson Palmer did. So, like, the Browns have a lot to gain here, too, from trading Myles Garrett. But obviously, yeah, Garrett has leverage in this situation, too, given that he's been a part of that organization for 8 years. He's a superstar, has already made his money, so he can play around with this a little bit here, too. But for the Steelers, what does this mean? Obviously, it's nice that Myles Garrett is potentially leaving the division, but why not keep him within the division? Steelers, why not? Why not? Listen, I've been a lot of doom and gloom this offseason, and in my opinion, rightfully so. I'm not apologizing for it. Steelers are in a bad spot right now. We are. I'm just calling it like I see it. We're in purgatory. But if we traded for Myles Garrett and stole the Browns franchise centerpiece and was able to pair him with TJ Watt, I think I'd cheer up pretty quick. Now, first part of the problem is, though, we'd be trading with the Browns. And there's no shot in hell the Browns want to trade Myles Garrett. They don't want to trade him at all, clearly by their statement, but they don't want to trade him even more so within the division, and then even more so to the Pittsburgh Steelers, the team that's just 2 hours away from Cleveland. But what if it was an offer that they couldn't refuse? And would that be worth it to us? Like, if we offered them something that was so ridiculous, would that still be worth it to us to make that deal? What would Myles Garrett get on the open market? Like, what would be just a fair trade for Myles Garrett if an NFC team was trading for him? You got to think, he's got a big contract. He's going to be due for another one soon, I believe. Khalil Mack, probably around the same age, a little bit older than Myles Garrett, went for a couple seconds to the Chargers. But Myles is better and more in his prime than Khalil Mack at that point. So it's going to be more than a couple seconds. Jalen Ramsey in his prime, whenever he got traded to the Rams, went for, I think it was a couple first, right? But Myles Garrett, he's been in the league for 8 years and not as much in his prime as a Jalen Ramsey. I don't know. Like, if Myles Garrett was going to an NFC team, it'd probably be, a first and a second, something like that. Because, again, you got to think about that contract and his age. Like, he's just like TJ Watt. He's getting up there. He's around 30. Now, typically, pass rushers age better than other defensive positions. But it's not like you're trading for Myles Garrett like 4 or 5 years ago, and you're getting him in his definitive prime. You're getting him on the back half of his prime and probably aging into the late stage of his career if you're trading for him and giving him a new deal. Man, yeah, maybe first and 2 seconds, first and a second and a third. I don't know, man. I don't know what he would get for an NFC team. That's what I'm trying to. I got to go off of that to think about what the Steelers could realistically offer. What about a first, Highsmith, Herbig, and a third? Is that, I don't even know if that's enough. That's a fair deal. That's legitimately a fair deal. But again, knowing that the Steelers would be dealing with Cleveland here, we'd probably have to give a little bit more, like a first, a second, Highsmith and Herbig. Is that enough? And should the Steelers do that? Yeah, I think if you're the Steelers, you still do that. If it was a first-round pick this year, maybe a future second, you'd probably, honestly, maybe it'd have to be like a first, a second, a third or a fourth, plus Highsmith, Herbig, or Highsmith and another piece on defense. Man, could you trade like a lineman? Are the Browns looking for any linemen? Would you throw Mason McCormick in there? And then, yeah, you got to go back to, is all that worth it for Myles Garrett? When, obviously, after this season ended, we were talking about how we need to spend more money on offense to get more offensive focus, because it doesn't matter how much we're spending on defense. We're giving up 30 points a game to these contending teams. You know what I mean? Like, even without Myles Garrett, our defense should be way better than what it was and how we finished the season. With the TJ Watt, Queen, Minka, Cam Hayward, JPJ, Dante Jackson, all that. We could go through the list of names and how much we paid our defense this year. So, like, does adding Myles Garrett really put us over the top like that? I would like to think so. Because teams have done stuff like this in the past. When you have two elite edge rushers like that, and teams can't focus on one side and try to avoid one player on one side, they got to deal with both. It's typically worked out for those teams in the past. And those teams that have taken big swings to get both elite edge rushers. It's not like a Denver had DeMarcus Ware on their team combined with Von Miller. They had to go out and get DeMarcus Ware. Rams, whenever they won the Super Bowl, they only had a Leonard Floyd. They had Aaron Donald in the middle. They had to go out of their way. And in a way, like, haul themselves on that trade to get Von Miller. He was just a 1 year rent or half a year rental. They traded, I think it was a couple second round picks to get him. Worked out. So, like, I think that's different than just spending, like, having two elite edge rushers, two guys that are always in the depoy conversation. I was gonna say two depoys, but I can't count Myles Garrett's depoy still. It was a fake depoy. If he wins this year, I'll give him that one. I'll give him this year. But the one from last year was a fake depoy. That was TJ Watts all day. Like, yeah, you would have the two of the top 4 or 5 edge rushers in the league. I mean, really, two of the top 3 probably at this point, because Nick Bosa really hasn't been the same. Micah Parsons, he was banged up last year. Literally the top 2 edge rushers in the league. TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, you would have on your team. I think that would be worth taking a chance. That'd be worth taking a swing, man. Even with us still needing to spend more on offense. Could you imagine TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Cam Hayward in the middle with a Keanu Benton? I'm assuming we're going to cut Ogunjobi, but you still got a Queen back. Hopefully he gets better year 2 in the system. Peyton Wilson, JPJ. Do we re-sign Dante Jackson? I'm sure we're going to add, even if we don't re-sign Dante Jackson, we're going to have some type of veteran corner over there. Minka and then Deshaun Elliott. Like, man, I would take my chances with that. Is the offer that I threw out there from the Steelers standpoint, is that enough, though? Is that enough? A first, a second, Highsmith and Herbig? First, second, Highsmith, Herbig, and another player, or a third-round pick, too? Then we got to take on the contract. And you think our defense is not only has it worked out for teams to win the Super Bowl, but I swear our defenses are at its best. Whenever we got two elite edge rushers, 2 guys getting 10-plus sacks. Most recently, it was TJ and Bud Dupree. That 2019 defense was awesome. Carried the offense that included Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph quarterbacking that squad. Before that, it was James Harrison, Lamar Woodley. Before that, it was Kevin Green, Greg Lloyd. And then before that, what am I missing? Before that, no. It was actually more recent than that. We didn't have two guys. Although I don't even know if they were keeping track of sacks like that in the 70s. I was going to say in the 1970s, there was no duo. But, yeah, more recently, it was Joey Porter Jr., I think Jason Gilden, two edge rushers. And we know those 90s defenses were pretty stout. I think we can maybe, if Omar Khan could play his cards right here, sign Justin Fields. We could do the Myles Garrett trade. You could restructure some contracts on defense, figure it out. And, like, if you sign Garrett to an extension, you could backload it so it's not as big of a cap hit. And then still spend on offense. Like, on offense, I feel like we're fine. On the O-line, we need to get more explosive at the running back position, but that could be had through the draft. We're talking about signing a receiver. We're talking, like, if we did this Garrett trade, obviously it would kind of be a luxury because we're all right still at the edge rushing spot. TJ Watt, Highsmith, Herbig, as is. Now, we want them to be better because obviously with the finish of last year, that still wasn't it. But we're in the top half of the league with those guys. So this would be it would be overkill a little bit, but at the same time, like you'd be giving up in my trade proposal, Highsmith and Herbig. You would need someone to replace them, which would be a Myles Garrett. But let's just say edge rusher isn't really on our priorities list this offseason, but it doesn't hurt to upgrade. I think we can still pull this off and get a D lineman, get a receiver, and get some running backs. I don't think that's that far of a stretch, given the cap space that we already have heading in this offseason, restructures we can make. And you think, too, Highsmith's contract is double digits. Herbig, he's still on his rookie deal, so that will, like, that trade-off will take up some of what Garrett's contract is. So you'll be spending the difference on that. Something to think about, man. It's not, I mean, maybe it's not, because it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But I'm all for taking swings, man. We got to shake some stuff up. And for us to try to be in the mix here, even if it is kind of like pie in the sky, I'd be for it. What say you guys? And if we actually got Myles Garrett here, would his DPOY count? I still don't think it would because he was on the Browns when the DPOY happened. I don't think that one would count. But any future ones that he would get with the Steelers, we could count it. I mean, it's not happening. It's just not. I do think Myles Garrett gets traded, though, now. I do. So even if he doesn't get traded to the Steelers, it helps us getting Myles Garrett out of the division. Because if the Browns don't trade him, they're not trading him within the division, most likely. Like, even if they don't trade him to us, they're not trading him within the AFC North. Highly doubt they trade him to the AFC, but we'll see. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I thought this was a fun thought exercise. But yeah, I was going to say, I have a channel update, like just a life career update type of thing. I'll probably do in the next like video or two. Probably at the end of tomorrow's video or something like that. I'll figure it out, but just wanted to give you guys a heads up there too. So stay tuned and let me know your thoughts on this. Stay chilling. Peace.